best part about having the tutoring company was that I could really resonate with parents because my boys were a lot of times at the same age as the students we were working with. So I think I could really relate to some of the concerns parents had about early literacy, making sure their kids had these strong reading and writing skills. So I understood from an academic standpoint the benefit of having this small group instruction or one-on-one instruction. But I also understood from a parent standpoint that they needed some flexibility, that they needed to work with tutors that understand that kids get sick and they have to kind of switch things around.
I feel like we're just coming out of the COVID kind of process, and kids are finally just starting to see and feel kind of back in the norm of being in school and actually going to school.
You know, our younger students were really little during the pandemic, so that's a little bit different. However, like the middle schoolers we have now, we're like in those really important like first grade time periods. So we're seeing students with a lot lower skills, I would say, across the board, and a lack of confidence, I would say, kind of runs the gamut. It really depends, I think, on, I have a weird perspective because I'm seeing students in college, but I'm also seeing third graders. So I think it kind of depends where you land on that spectrum and how old you were when the pandemic was going on in terms of like how it impacted.
Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast, where life is messy, but we always find meaning in it. Every week, we pull out the stories, the lessons, and the hidden gems. And then we ask the big question, keep it or kick it? If you're ready for real talk, brave steps forward.
I'm your host, Lisa Begley, and you're listening to the Sock Drawer Podcast. Let's jump right in. Hey there, have you ever wondered what it really takes to reinvent yourself when life has already demanded everything from you? Imagine shifting gears, shifting careers, after raising 3 boys on your own, navigating health challenges, returning to school, launching your own business, and then still waking up every day believing you can give a voice to others. Well, today I'm honored to introduce you to Dr. Meghan Waldron, a lifelong educator, a writer, a business owner, and a pre-health advisor. Meg has raised 3 boys on her own, built a tutoring company from the ground up. I can't wait to hear more about that. Returned to school later in life to earn her doctorate, and now helps students find clarity, confidence, and direction. Her journey is full of reinvention, resilience, advocacy, and quiet courage. Dr. Meg Waldron, welcome to the Sock Drawer Podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. That was very nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and kind of dig in. My husband does not know I'm on a Sock Drawer podcast. I'm afraid he'll get some ideas that I need to go clean.
Okay.
So we'll keep it on the DL for a little bit.
We'll keep it on the DL, and it's just casual here. So whatever has to happen. Listen, take me back a little bit, just like you said. Let's dig in, because I'm, you've reinvented yourself multiple times over the years. Take me back to the beginning and like when this all sort of started, raising 3 boys on your own. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I obviously did not know that was the trajectory that I was going to be on.
Yeah.
But I was raised by an educator. I did not think that I would go into education. I kind of fell into it. I was living out in California and I started teaching adult ed and I really loved it. So I moved back home and ended up pursuing education as a career. So when my boys were young, I unfortunately went through a divorce and I had all 3 of the boys on my own. My tutoring company was at a great point at that point, Lisa, and I had to put it on the back burner to go back to the classroom so that I could be on the same schedule as my boys. So they were in 4th grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. So it was a huge undertaking to kind of step back into the classroom and figure out what that looked like after being at home for, almost 10 years with them. So it definitely was not, something that I had anticipated that would happen, but I think it was a true blessing in disguise. It allowed me to stay, in the same, on the same schedule as them. And I still kept the tutoring going at night and on the weekends. And luckily I had a really awesome tribe with my family and that to be able to help me through all those, pivots.
So good. Well, that's a lot. So I think I heard you say you already had the tutoring company started. So that didn't come later. That was previous to the divorce and the boys. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just put it on the back burner.
I
Yeah.
started Smart Solutions in 2007 when my son Charlie was 1. So I had been teaching for about 6 years at the time. And I knew I wanted to keep my foot in the door with education, but I wanted to be able to be a stay-at-home mom. So I was fortunate to come into contact with a really awesome tutoring company that they did not have a scarcity mindset. They were like, hey, look, we'll help you get yours started. So I took a
Mm.
leap of faith and did, and just would go at night and have Charlie in the little carrier and bring him to different appointments with me at Starbucks and whatnot. And we moved to Richmond when he was about 18 months old, and that's when I started it here in Richmond. So it's been a labor of love. It's kind of ebbed and flowed with me as the boys have grown, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really glad that I've had that all the way through.
That's amazing. Well, tell me, okay, so taking it back to early motherhood, what moments from early motherhood or teaching or you having that smart solutions tutoring
Yeah.
still sort of like, would you say kind of echo in your life today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Lisa, the best part about having the tutoring company was that I could really resonate with parents because my boys were a lot of times at the same age as the students we were working with. So
Okay.
I think I could really relate to some of the concerns parents had about early literacy, making sure their kids had these strong reading and writing skills. So I understood from an academic standpoint the benefit of having this small group instruction or one-on-one instruction. But I also understood from a parent standpoint that they needed some flexibility, that they needed to work with tutors that understand that kids get sick and they have to kind of switch things around. So I think the reason we have lasted so long is that we are kind of embedded in some of these families. We've worked with multiple siblings and cousins. And during the pandemic, when a lot of businesses obviously struggled, it really helped us kind of propel forward because we moved to a hybrid model. And then obviously, when everything shut down, we moved to a virtual model.
Yeah.
So I really think that the tutoring has been reflective of kind of my own life stages. So that has been, I think, a real gift.
I would say. Well, and you mentioned, I mean, we talked a little bit about having some other challenges as you were coming through, getting through this. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So when my youngest son Holden was born, I actually was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So that was something where I really was not sure what my trajectory would look like with that. So I think that was part of my decision to move back into the classroom as well, to be able to make sure I had benefits and that I had a lot of stability with the boys.
Sure.
But tutoring, I think one of the really great parts about having, somebody called it my side hustle last week, having it is that, when the kids needed something or there was a need to kind of have more income, we could kind of grow it in ways that worked with our family. So, yeah, there's been no shortage of kind of twists and turns and kind of navigating some unexpected paths. But
hmm
um, I really have always loved, loved, loved teaching students to write and to find their own voice. And it's honestly been such a huge outlet for me as well, kind of working through some of the things that we just talked about.
That is a journey for sure. Well, so you mentioned going back to school. At what point in your story did you end up saying, "Hey, I'm going to go back to school"?
Yeah. So I think like a lot of people, it was not something where I was super excited to go back to school. Like that was, I
Yeah.
love learning, but it wasn't kind of my plan. But I was working in an environment that wasn't great, if I'm being really honest. And there was a lot of turnover in the school where I was. And I made an attempt to kind of go into leadership. I went through an administrative program to be able to be an assistant principal or a principal, did a 500-hour internship or whatever it took, and got certified. And then the pandemic hit. And I just was like, I don't really want to do this. Like, I know I want to help and I
Mm,
want to be in a leadership capacity, but I don't necessarily want to do it within a K-12 setting.
yeah.
Um, and I had a really, really firecracker of a teacher. She was a superintendent in a rural district here in Virginia. And she looked at us one day in one of the classes we were at James Madison, and she said, I think you guys are going to go back and get your doctorate. And Lisa, it had never dawned on me. I had 3 young kids at home. I was like, there is no way I'm going back to school to get my doctorate. I can't wait to be done with this internship and call it a day. But
Yeah.
it kind of planted a seed. And during the pandemic, after making muffins and cleaning out your sock drawer and doing all the other things, I was like, let me look at these programs at
Yeah.
Tech and at VCU and just kind of see what's out there. And I
hmm
applied and was accepted and kind of never turned back. And it was just like the best decision, I think, for me, for sure.
That's amazing. Well, what surprised you most about being an adult learner, would you say?
Yeah. I think that when you're studying what you want to study is actually really awesome. So much of
Yeah.
what our students struggle with, especially in the K-12 realm, because I was there for 15 years in the classroom is school's compulsory, right? So students are there because they have to be there. It's the law.
Yeah.
And that has been the shift for me being in higher ed, is that students are there for the most part by choice. So I
Yeah.
think with adult learning, you take it up an even bigger notch, that people are there. Most of the people in my program were superintendents, principals, administrators in higher ed, in federal law enforcement. I mean, it really ran the gamut in our leadership program, and they were really excited to move into the next chapter of whatever their career looked like. So I think that was really inspiring to be around people who were that motivated in their 40s, 50s, some in their 60s. So I really appreciated those really collegiate conversations, but also we were in a program, if you get your EDD, they're kind of the boots on the ground people. So these are not researchers in a PhD program, but they are in the schools doing the work. So it was really inspiring to be with those folks.
I can only imagine. I bet it was. Now, you mentioned, I know you do a lot of writing. Can you kind of tell me more about that? Tell me more about the
Yeah.
write, because writing, you have a tutoring company, you raised 3 boys, you went through a
Yeah.
health challenge. Like
Yeah.
this is an amazing story. Like you've really reinvented yourself and come out of the ashes, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So when my youngest son, Matthew, was born, he was born at 26 weeks. He was 1 pound, 3 ounces, and he was in the NICU here in Richmond. And I was fortunate to be introduced to the March of Dimes. And so during his NICU journey, he was in the hospital for a long time, almost 100 days. Writing was an outlet for me. It was a life raft, I would say. So it was when blogging kind of became like a new thing. So March of Dimes had this site called Share Your Story, and these parents would it was kind of like Caring Bridge, I guess, but would share their different stories and give each other advice, and kind of just became a support system. So that's where I really saw writing as a way to not only kind of release some of the stress and the anxiety that I was dealing with as a mother with a kid in the NICU for a long time,
Yeah.
but also it formed a sense of community. And I have always tried to instill that in our own writing classes. After the pandemic, we really noticed that students were lacking that sense of community. So we built our small learning community model where students write in groups of 5. And so writing for me has always been a way to kind of put my thinking on paper. And I think it's a place to be vulnerable. And that's what I really try to model for our students. We write alongside them often in class. So when they're writing, we're also writing. We share sometimes after them because they're like, don't go first. I want to go after you.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a way to show them that, there's a way to process things that you're going through, and that can be done, in counseling or in other ways, but you can also kind of write to release some of that as well.
That's amazing. And when you're writing alongside your students, what patterns do you see in students nowadays who feel, is writing part of kind of helping to, I guess, fill the gap of feeling unseen or feeling unsure? Do you feel like
Yeah,
that's
I
helpful?
think it's been the opposite, Lisa. I mean, I have been out of the K-12 classroom for 2 years, but my husband
Yeah.
actually works in a prison.
Oh,
So I'm kind of, definitely still in the academic world, like through different, my friends and through my spouse. But
yeah.
I think some places writing is used in ways that we just talked about. But what I saw as a pattern, especially after the pandemic, there was such a fear of learning loss that
Yeah.
academic writing has definitely taken front seat. So students are doing a lot of analysis, a lot of, we weren't even allowed to teach whole text. You could teach like partial text.
Mhm.
So there's just a lot of, I would say, more academic style writing. Students will write personal narratives when they're applying to college and things like that.
Yeah.
The idea of kind of working through the writing process and writing being a reflective process, I did not see that as much, I would say, as I did in the beginning of my career.
Okay.
That will come back. I think it's just going to take some intentionality, and quite honestly, it doesn't align with a lot of testing that students do. So writing, I think that's where we really see our business as vital, because writing has left the classroom in a lot of capacities, I would say, unless it's academic.
Yeah. Okay, paint a picture for me. What does Smart Solutions tutoring look like today on a day-to-day? What do you see? What's the process? And then give me some insight as if someone was looking for that, how they could reach out.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have 8 teachers that work with us. They are all teaching during the day. We used to have a model where we only use certified teachers, and we kind of expanded our thinking. So we have one teacher that's she homeschools her kids, but she was a public school teacher before that. We have another that works at a local university, and she works with our older students. So we have multiple students that are on one-to-one contracts. So they schedule out and work with those instructors one-to-one, usually once a week. And then our small learning community model, students meet twice a week. They meet with 2 different instructors. So they get feedback from 2 different people. And we have teachers that have all different skill sets. One is a reading specialist, one is a professional poet, one is an SAT coach. So we really try to kind of pull in our different skill sets so students have
Yeah,
access to different styles of writing and reading as well.
I
So
love
day
that.
to day is different. It depends on the day. Right now we're in a break between our small learning communities. But during college application season, I can be at the university all day and then teaching 4 classes at night. It really just depends kind of where we are in the cycle.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the age group with your tutoring company?
Yeah, we work with students in grades 3 through 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had a center before the pandemic and we worked with students in person. We had about 50 students that would come 3 nights a week. That obviously went away during COVID, but we
Yeah.
brought it back in some capacity this past summer. And so we had a small group of students who would meet with us in person. The local rec center gave us space to do that. So it was awesome. And we'll continue that again this coming summer and fall. So we really saw our
Okay.
younger writers just do a lot better when they're not online.
Okay, good. So that was going to be my next question was like, is it a split like in person and online? Like, could you also, or do you accommodate people out of the area, not local?
Yeah,
Or
so we have students all over. We have students in Missouri, we have
amazing.
students in California. It gets
Well,
tricky
that's
with
great.
time zone a little bit with our teachers. They don't want to be up too late. But
Yeah,
yeah, we have students all
I get
over,
that.
especially for the college
Yeah.
process. They're kind of all over. And our older
Uh-huh.
students do fine. Like our stats in terms of their acceptance rate and everything were just as high if they were in
Yeah,
person or if they were one-to-one online. What gets a little bit tricky, Lisa, is when you have a 3rd grader online, they just don't have that,
I would guess.
yeah, that gets
Yeah.
tricky. So with our youngest students, unless they're pretty adept like with technology, we meet with them in
Hmm.
person and we're here in Richmond.
So good. And, I'm curious to kind of, as you went through COVID and that whole process, you were kind of already set up in that way. So that was good. But what challenges did you see? And I'm curious to know, because I've talked to other teachers and I hear, the difference of, I feel like we're just, and this is my own in 2 cents, I feel like we're just coming out of the COVID kind of process and kids are finally to just starting to see and feel kind of back in the norm of being in school and actually going to school.
Yeah.
Like, do you see that as
Yeah, I
you
think
were
it
able to
depends
accommodate
on,
that well?
yeah,
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
think it depends on the age group. So the
Okay.
ACT reported last year that like they had the lowest reading math scores in another subject that's escaping me, might have been science, in 32 years. So I think depending on how old you were during the pandemic, we're still seeing some of those ramifications. So
I see.
um I guess, our younger students were really little during the pandemic, so that's a little bit different. However, like the middle schoolers we have now, we're like in those really important, like 1st grade time periods. So we're seeing
Yeah.
students with a lot lower skills, I would say, across the board, and a lack of confidence, I would say, kind of runs the gamut. It really, really, really depends, I think, on. I have a weird perspective because I'm seeing students in college, but I'm also seeing 3rd graders. So I think it kind of
Yeah.
depends where you
Yeah.
land on that spectrum and how old you were when
Yeah.
the pandemic was going on in terms of like how it impacted your education. Were you in algebra 1 during that really pivotal, like ground foundational math? Like that's having
Yeah.
an impact on students in college, for example.
Okay.
And same thing with our like 6th and 7th graders. They were, in those really formative years where they didn't get to go to kindergarten and 1st grade in person. So, yeah, if you talk to educators, depending on what grade they're in, they have a lot of feedback about that.
Share with me a little bit. I'm curious. Are you working with kids that, um, have challenges and they need a little extra, support and guidance on certain subjects, or is it, more like preparing them. You're preparing
Yeah.
students for the college life or the career life, whatever that looks like, or is it a mix of both?
I'd say it's a mix of both. A lot of
Okay.
our writing is enrichment. So we have a lot of students who are applying to the governor's school, or they're applying to a specialty program or a magnet type high school program here. But our younger writers, we have a teacher that's certified in special education. So she will work with students that have all different types of learning struggles. So it really depends on what parents are seeking. A lot of parents don't feel like their kids are getting the writing instruction in school. So they're coming to us to make sure that they're college ready and that they know how to write. And AI has added a whole other layer to that, as you can imagine. And
Sure.
then some of our younger writers, some parents say, like, I'm really concerned. They're just really struggling to read or write. And then they will work with our teachers that are certified in those areas.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, that makes sense. So I'm curious to know what you see. And maybe it's different, maybe it's not, maybe it changes. But what are you seeing kids going to college, choosing not to go to college, just finishing, going in different directions? What other than college, what other choices are you seeing that kids are making these days?
I mean, I think I probably have a little bit of a slanted view because most of the students I'm working with are going to college. And then obviously I work at a college, so the students there have chosen to go the 4-year route.
Sure.
However, we're in Virginia, and so our community colleges have reciprocity with our state universities. So I'm
Mm,
not sure that it's like that in all 50 states, but a lot of students, for cost purposes, will go and do all their general education requirements and some of their major requirements and then transfer into a 4-year institution. So that has become much more normalized. It's a much more streamlined process for students and
yeah.
families. So for students who aren't sure if college is for them, I'm 100% an advocate of going to community college because everything transfers, right? When you and I were in college,
Yeah.
it was like a crapshoot. Like you didn't know if what you took was gonna be accepted by university.
Yeah.
I also think K-12 has done an excellent job with pushing trades in high school. So when
I
I was in
love
high
that.
school, I think trades were really stigmatized. If you were doing trade, it's because you weren't academic. In the county where we are, for example, I taught AP and IB English. I had students that would come to me for AP, and then they would go to trade school and do carpentry. So, well, HVAC, I guess. But I think that carpentry is at the other.
Some trade or
Yeah,
another. Yeah.
son did that at his. But
Yeah.
I think that really helps, I think, show that, trades are valuable and so are academics. So I think that they have
Yeah.
really, instead of making it an either or, like a lot of districts have made it an and both for students.
I love that.
So it also gives them options. They're coming out as a certified whatever they decide to go into.
Yeah.
EMT is another big one. And then, if they
Ooh,
decide to go to college, awesome. But if not, they also have a skill set that's actually like tangible and they can go and use.
fall back. I love that because I mean, over my years, I remember, and I think a lot of this, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, has to do with geographical location. Okay, good. I didn't know if I was like overstating that, but I feel so growing up in Southern California, I and this comes from parents too, and no, not a dig on my parents, but it's like sometimes you're not encouraged to go to college or you're not encouraged to do this, and there's no focus on it. Where I remember we moved in '93 back to Syracuse, East Coast, from West Coast to East Coast, and my biggest focus was a greater um opportunity, let's just say, for our children to grow up in an environment where it was more focused to go to college. I've seen that kind of be like this, right? Over the years, like college, yes, go, go, go. And then sometimes like, no, like, I think, you don't have to go to college to be considered successful. You could do the trades. So I see a kind of a up and down pattern with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Some years it's this, some years it's that.
Yeah.
It just seems to fluctuate quite often. Do you tend to
Yeah,
see that
yeah,
or?
I definitely see that. And I grew up outside
Okay.
of DC, and the county where I was, everyone went to college. Like it wasn't even a thing. I mean, there
Yeah.
were trade schools, but like I said, I feel like it was somewhat stigmatized where we were.
Yep.
Now I'm in Richmond, Virginia, which is a little bit more rural. And so I think there's just a different outlook on it. But I think across the board, there obviously is still a big push for college in a lot of
Yeah.
places, especially if you're in, a really competitive environment.
Yeah.
However, I think that there are options for students who they know college is not for them. And
Yeah.
every day I sit down with students who, think that college is for them, but maybe it's not for them right now. And I think that's something that my goal is to help normalize that a little bit as well. I mean,
I
I
love
think it's
that.
fine if you
Yeah.
need to take a year to work and kind of figure that out because
Yes.
a lot of money on the line if that's not where you want to be.
Hmm. That is I'm so happy to hear you say that because I'm definitely a firm believer in that as well is, it's okay. And if you're just going to go, um, even my grandson, I was very happy to hear. Now he's a senior this year, and I was happy to hear him say he knows if I can go to college and do this, play football, let's say, for example, if I can go to college and play football, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to focus and I'll stay dedicated. But if not, I know I'm going to go over here and do this. Right. So he gave himself like either or,
Right.
I could
Yeah.
do both and I want to do either or. And I just appreciate that being a senior, he actually had that
Yeah.
full awareness. And that's, I think, to your point right now, sometimes I feel like we're missing that, right? We're missing, kids aren't getting that opportunity to just kind of feel that out and be able to make a good decision based on where they're at
Yeah.
when they're graduating. Would
Yeah, I
you?
mean, I think like we said, if it's, a community college option, or some students will choose to go part-time and they're working as
Yeah.
a phlebotomist or a medical
Yeah.
assistant or something like that. I'm a huge advocate of experiential learning too. So even if
Yeah.
students are in college, I encourage students every day to try to get internships, one or two, while they're in their 4-year program, if that's, the path they're on. Because
Yeah.
I know as a teacher, a couple times I had student teachers and they got in there and they were like, I don't really like this. I'm like, we're graduating in 6 months, so you can switch after you finish. But that's pretty easy with teaching, right? Like if you decide to go into
Yeah.
sales or do something else. But you
Yeah.
see these students that are, for example, like on a healthcare path, Lisa, and if you're going to be a nurse, like you're committing to that your freshman year of college to go to nursing school. It's hard to like at that point, if you decide I don't really want to do this and you're 3 years into college, right? And you've spent that and you've invested that much time and energy. So
Yeah.
I think having those opportunities in high school, a lot of schools are bringing in like pharmacy programs, nursing programs, EMT programs, fire programs. So I think having kids have that exposure early helps them kind of figure out what they like, but more importantly, I think what they don't like, because there's a
Yeah.
huge investment there if that's not what they want to be doing.
Yeah, that's so smart. I love to hear this evolution of education for our kids. What are you doing now? Like
Yeah.
what's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think continuing to work with students in any capacity is kind of what's really important for me, what drives me. I have had the opportunity, and I won't spill it all yet, but I'm looking at starting a second company here in the US. They're housed actually in Europe. But in this next venture, it's bringing women leaders together and having opportunities to broaden those conversations and to bring women across from different sectors. One of the things that I love about being in a university setting is there's tons of opportunity for growth. And I'm not talking like
Mhm.
canned professional development,
Right.
even like leadership programs. Higher ed really, really helps educate the people who are working for them. But I know from being in different, being in a K-12 setting, for example, like that is not the norm in most places. So my hope is to kind of bring some of that dialogue to different women and to help, keep learning, I guess.
So good. So good. I love hearing that. So I can't wait. All right. Just
Stay
I'm going to
tuned.
be standing by. Stay tuned for sure. What I think what I guess what is so that's what you're doing now. That's something on the horizon.
Right.
Where are your boys at? How are your
Yeah.
boys doing?
Yeah, so we have 5 boys. We're in a blended family. So my oldest stepson is the youngest police officer at the university where I work, which is really cool. I never see him. It's a massive university.
So cool.
Yeah, and then we have 2 in college. So
Mhm.
one studying education, and then one actually studying sociology. And then I have a senior in high school who just went through the whole application process. So he's waiting, and he vacillated. He didn't know if he was going to go straight to school, but like your
Yeah.
grandson, he's taking the jump, see how it goes. And then I have a sophomore who actually is in military school. So they are all in very different places, different paths.
Amazing.
And it's busy. Lots of socks in the sack drawer, Lisa.
I love it. And thank you I love the metaphor. I love it so much. I have this drawer method that that I use quite often called the drawer method.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. That's
But
awesome.
it's to your point on women, leadership. I don't know if you're focused just on, I think you said women leadership, right? Or women in leadership. And I think it's something that over my years of reinvention has helped me just sort of stay tuned and stay focused and and always fall back on. And just using the acronym, using the D for decide to take action, which is you're doing this right. You're like in the moment doing it, creating this next step for you. Remove one obstacle, just one. Like there's so many I know we have. Remove an obstacle, apply one thing you already know, wing it, like just if you don't take the chance, right? You miss 100% of the chances you
Right.
never
Bill
take,
Gretzky.
right?
You got it. Yep.
That's right. And so yes, Gretz, you know who I said the other day? I was like, I think Vince Lombardi said this.
You're
And
great.
I'm so glad. Yeah, that's so true. So the next is just really evaluate and establish boundaries.
I
And the
love
last
that.
thing is
Yeah.
rinse and repeat. Just
Yeah.
rinse and
I
repeat.
love
Like
it.
if you can do those steps,
Yeah.
and I think that's helped me over the years. I've fallen back on that. Well, listen, before we kind of wrap it up, I want to we let people know where can they go. Is there a website that
Yes.
they can reach out to you on?
Yeah, we are at Smart Solutions VA for like Virginia.com.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you're open to anybody across the country.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah. We even have
Okay.
kids overseas. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So listen up, listeners. SmartSolutions.va.
SmartSolutionsVA.com.
VA.com.
You got it.
Okay. Write that down. SmartSolutionsVA.com. And before we wrap up, we always like to do our drawer dash with our guests. It's a 60 seconds.
All
Quick
right.
truth and fun. All right. Are you ready?
Good.
Let's go
Yeah,
throw
we'll
'em
see
at
what I
you.
do.
Coffee, tea, or something stronger?
Definitely coffee.
Okay. A word that describes the way you show up for your students.
Ready.
That's exactly what came to my head. A book you would often recommend.
The Alchemist.
Okay, we could talk about that offline. One thing people misunderstand about reinvention.
It's not as hard as it needs. You don't have to make it harder than it needs to be.
I love that.
That took a
So
second.
true. Small ritual that helps you reset yourself.
Wake up every morning and go for a walk.
I love that. A truth you've learned along well, let me rephrase. A truth, not that you've learned along the way, but a truth you've learned the hard way.
Everything you need is inside.
Do you have a book? That's not on this list. I'm like, okay, I feel like that's something that you're a writer. You should. Okay, a recent moment of pride.
Huh. Gosh. A recent moment of pride. I would guess that I helped my sister at a conference for addiction medicine, and I got to see her in her element, and it made me really proud to see the work that she's doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Addiction element. All right, Meg. One small, tiny dare we ask our guests every week. What would one small, completely doable, actionable, tiny dare be as a challenge for our listeners that they could implement right away?
Yeah. So I read about your drawer method, and I practice Ohio, which stands for only handle it once. So I am a recovering perfectionist. So I am challenging your listeners and myself that once you make a decision, don't go back to it. Only handle it once.
That's so easy. Only handle it once. Okay, listeners, you heard it. Just keep that in mind throughout your day as you go through. I love that so much. And so listeners, listen, if you know, you know. If you've been with me for a while, you have heard of the drawer method. Now you've heard of the Ohio method. Only handle it once. In each of these moments, it's I think that's how I've been able to function, is to fall back on something like that, right? It's kind of like, Mel Robbins has her 5-second rule. You find something that works for you. Now here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Ponder on this. What's one part of your life, a thought, a habit, or a dream, listeners, that you might be ready to quietly revisit. Think about that this week. Stay brave and join us next week for another powerful reinvention. And Dr. Meghan Waldron, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Meghan Waldron. All right. We're going to have her back, especially after her next chapter begins.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you
course.
soon.
Thanks.
All right, Sock Drawer family, that's a wrap on today's drawer dump. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their story and their heart with us. Until next time. Don't forget, life's too short for mismatched socks. Retire the ones with holes, inspire the ones that still shine. See you soon.